it's always better to start a lot lower and then get the multiple offers and get the over ask versus starting a lot higher and then chasing the market down.
Welcome back to the CashFlow podcast, the podcast where we talk about turning properties into profits. I'm your host, Jason Yost, and before I introduce my guest, I want to give a special thank you to our sponsors, Rainforest Plumbing, Heating, and Air. They service all your needs in the Maricopa Valley, Phoenix, Scottsdale, and beyond. Thank you very much for what you do. And Daniel's Plumbing. They service San Diego County, Orange County, LA County, Inland Empire, and all your plumbing needs here in Southern California. Thank you again. We wouldn't be here without them. Now, my special guest today, someone, a friend, a colleague. I love her so much, Lena Saba.
Yes. Hi. Thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks for coming on. First of all, just want to talk about how we met because I think this is the most important. I met Lena in, mixers and functions, but I started following her on social media, and she would put out this weekly tech tip. And so me being the knuckle dragger that I am, I color with crayons. One of the first tips I learned was how to do a shortcut on phrases in my phone for like text or my contact information or whatever. And I was hooked. And so ever since then, I'm like, all right, what's she putting out this week? And you've obviously expanded. You got more stuff on your social media now. So Lena from Compass, how are you?
I'm doing great. Yeah. Text replacement is, I think, my ultimate favorite tech tip.
Text replacement. So that's what it's called.
Yeah. Well, when you go into your settings, you look up text replacement, and you can set up a whole bunch of shortcuts.
Got it. And I think I was just telling you, like mine is like if I put in CC, that puts all my contact information out, which used to take me forever to do.
Oh, yeah. I have SIG for my signature, so I get that too.
There you go. See, exactly. So let's talk a little bit about you and your background. There's a ton to do in the real estate industry. How did you decide to get into residential real estate?
Yeah, so my background is I grew up in San Diego. I went to San Diego State. I majored in mathematics thinking that I was going to be a math teacher.
Nice.
But life took a different road, and I ended up working at the Manchester Grand Hyatt downtown San Diego. And I did front desk, and then I did reservations, and I actually did reservations management. And it was really funny because my reservations manager got promoted to revenue manager, and then I took her old job. And when I did get into real estate, she ended up being my first client.
Really?
Yeah. So I posted that I joined Compass, and she's like, reached out to me, and she's like, Lena, I need to move. And I'm like, perfect.
So your background being in hospitality set you up perfectly to handhold buyers and sellers on what is a huge transaction in their life.
100%. 100%.
Now, getting going in our journey, I'm a big believer in mentorship. Who have you leaned on or looked to help you on your road to success?
Yeah, right now my biggest mentor is Kimberly Schmidt. She's my team lead, and she's been in the business going on 19 years. So I rely heavily on her for her expertise, and I really am big on iron sharpening iron.
Right. Because
as good as you think you are, you always will benefit from someone that has more experience, that's more polished, and I think, I'm sure you've heard this many times, you're as good as the top 5 people you surround yourself with. Right. And so I really look up to her. And I think it's really important, especially if you're new, to find that mentor, not only that you look up to, but that you can learn from.
That's right. I mean, Rockstar, obviously, that's a Rockstar team that you're on, and it shows by the work you're doing. Talk to me a little bit about what your strategy has been. Talk to me about social media specifically. I mean, you're a rock star over there. I love seeing your stuff. I just talked about the things that I've got into. How have you used that to leverage your business and your growth?
Yeah. So I think in general, a lot of the real estate media can kind of get boring and stale just with just listed, just sold. And right. So right off the bat, what was funny is I actually used to not be on social media at all. I used to never post. So it was very a 180 for me to start posting regularly. And so when I first started, I was like, okay, well, what do I love? What do I like? Right. And so the things that I love is house music, first of all.
Yes.
And secondly, I love learning about different features of the iPhone. It's a thing that we're on all the time. Right. And I'm always trying to figure out Like, what's the latest and greatest?
Yeah.
Like, I'm a big nerd. So, like, even when, like, Steve Jobs used to come out and do, like, the talks, like, I would watch it. And so I just really like to know, what are the latest features? How can I be more efficient? And that's kind of what led my love for technology. And then also, I kind of, like I said before, I think I have a little teacher in me. So I can't help but want to share and want to teach others to also level up their game.
You definitely, now that you told me you wanted to be a math teacher, which I would have never known, now that, because I religiously follow the tech tips, now I understand, it makes full circle. And so you utilize that. You have great content. I mean, how many people do we see on social media doing, like you said, just sold or basic stuff, dancing?
Yeah.
But yours was very educational, and it made people want to come back and watch some more.
Yeah, I think so, because even like you said, so I would go to these different networking events, and it turned into like an icebreaker, and then it's like, oh, hey, do you know how to do this with your phone and that? And then, automatically people have a more warm reception to you when you're teaching them something that they can actually use. You're not just like some other agent that's just trying to like win their business or sell them something. You're actually providing some sort of value.
There's value. And 100%, when you're a value add, that's so much better than trying to have a pitch or something like that. And then the house music, of course. Some people don't love it. I mean, it's fine. But if you do love it, then it's always like, yes. And then to see you, behind the turntables, to see you DJ, that's always like, is that Lena over there? That's Lena over there doing that. So how long have you been doing that?
So once I actually closed my first deal with Kathy, my previous boss, that was one of the first things I did was I purchased the entire setup. And so I started taking lessons. I'm still taking lessons.
Really?
I'm still learning. Yeah, there's so much. It's like imagine being a pilot and there's all these buttons and there's so many options and so many different ways to go. So to me, I feel like, again, you're always learning. You're always getting better. I still don't feel like I'm at the level where I can really call myself a DJ, but I do, some gigs here and there for friends and whatnot. And so I'm getting there.
I love it. We'll see you at Petco soon on a lineup, 100%. Let's talk to me about, now with all this background and knowledge and the mentorship you have, what is that real estate philosophy that you're imparting to your clients, setting them up for success?
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of people kind of say like, well, what's your angle, when you're a real estate agent? Because it's like everyone has an angle because, again, there's so many agents and you have an option of working with so many different people. And I think for me, what ends up happening is a lot of my clients become friends because I, in essence, treat them like family.
Yeah.
And it is such a big decision. And it's so I just kind of go over and above, and I always try to make them feel as comfortable as possible through the process and really guide them and give them the best options that there are so that they can make the best decision.
When we're talking about that type of level of service and that availability to your clients, is it ever in a situation where it can be abused? Like, I'm always afraid of giving out my cell phone number because then people will call at all hours for stuff that is an emergency. How do you handle that kind of situation?
Well, luckily I'm not like property management where like there's a leak in the middle of the night and they have to call me because of a leak. So I think for me, luckily no one's really abused it. I think most people, especially people that follow me, they know that I'm waking up at 5 a.m. to do my 5:30 workouts. I'm in bed by 9. And so if someone does call or text, it's on Do Not Disturb. So I don't actually know. And I'll get the message in the morning and I'll respond then.
Right. I think that's a great way to handle it, especially knowing those tech tips. So I want to showcase some of the transactions that you've done so that others can learn from some of the things, both success and things where you're like, hey, here's something that helped me grow and learn. So talk to me. You have a viral video, something that went huge last year, and it was about a theft at an open house. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
Sure, yeah. That was kind of a really unfortunate incident because that particular client that I was working with had listed his property for sale, and he already had certain situation with the neighbor and stuff, so he didn't even want a for sale sign in front of his house. He didn't want people to know he was really selling.
Right.
So that was already the first hurdle. The second hurdle was he didn't even want open houses.
Yeah.
So sell my home without selling my home was the situation we were in on that one. So, but he reluctantly agreed to do an open house. And this was after a property 1 block over had just gone on the market and sold. And they were doing open houses.
Right.
And I told him, I said, hey, listen, let's go check out that property together so that you can see, quote unquote, your competition. So that property ended up not being 100% apples to apples comp. It was actually a different product. So it was, even though it was one street over, it was a corner unit, it had a view. And so that's another thing that I learned too. And I was hoping that he would learn as well, which is that you can't take the comps like at face value.
The bedroom, bath, like, oh, well, it's a 3-bedroom as well, so that should be the same. Like, no.
Yeah, exactly. And that sold for like 1.7, and that was a much higher price point than his property was listed for at the time. Initially, when we went on market, we were at 1.625, and we weren't getting offers at that price.
And what did you think the comp was probably or should be, even though you went on the market at 1.625? And again, we have clients who like want to push the envelope. Where do you think he could have started that might have been a little more successful?
I mean, in hindsight, it's always better to start a lot lower and then get the multiple offers and get the over ask versus starting a lot higher and then chasing the market down.
Sure. 100%. So you have the property. He said, like, no, don't market it, but please sell it for maybe above market. And then finally, after a quote-unquote competition sold, that opened him up saying, like, okay, I'm willing to do other things.
Exactly. And then so that's when we had the open house. And because it was also a 3-story townhouse, I knew that I could not do this open house alone. So I had one of my lender partners with me doing the open house.
Sure.
And then we had a individual that came in, and right off the bat, we had a feeling that there was something off with him, that his story didn't make sense. He was kind of weird, but we couldn't put our finger on it. So he came in, he gave the story that he actually wanted to be downtown. Mind you, the listing was in Mission Valley, so that already didn't make sense.
Not downtown.
And then he said something about also wanting to be close to San Diego State. So again, didn't make sense. So he proceeded to tour the property, and later, obviously we didn't know this at the time, but later my client had sent me, he had cameras throughout the home, and he had sent me the video of the individual going through, rummaging through his drawers. Wow. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy. And not everybody has cameras, and so it is a big fear factor of, hey, letting people in my home, this could happen.
Oh, yeah. I mean, obviously, the best case scenario is the home is vacant or the home is, vacant and staged. But in this particular case, he was still living on property. So, and in general, we do advise our clients to not leave any valuables.
Right.
So,
what was his reaction after he sent you that video saying, I didn't want an open house, I reluctantly let you do one, and look at what happened?
Yeah. So,
on day one, the first open house?
I think it was the second.
Okay,
day,
got it.
But still, nonetheless.
Sure.
I think it was in his initial reaction, he was actually really funny, and he made lots of jokes about it. But then after the story was getting picked up, and I asked permission, obviously, if I could share it on social media to kind of warn other agents.
Be careful. Look out for this gentleman. Look out for this thing to happen.
Yeah, and it turned out a lot of agents recognized him too, and they were messaging me like, oh yeah, he's come to my open house. And even one of my colleagues with Compass had an open house in La Jolla, and he had gone to her open house that week later, and she recognized him right away from the video.
Crazy.
So, but yeah, I mean, initially he was making jokes about it, but then after the story kind of went viral and ABC News and Fox News and all these local stations picked it up, he wasn't too happy about it. And we thought, well, any publicity is good publicity. Maybe we can still get this thing sold. But it turned out that particular unit had a lot of factors that I initially also didn't take into consideration that were coming up as we were getting showings. Like something I learned was, okay, this property in particular was pretty close to the electrical power lines.
Right.
And that was something that people really were fearful of.
Sure.
And then just it being in a middle unit really did not help with the value of that property.
Sure. It wasn't 2021 where you could just throw something out there. It's going to come off the market. People really want what they want. And so you couldn't push the envelope. That makes sense.
Yeah. And also, when you think about it, big picture, $1.6 million is still a lot of money.
Yeah.
So you're going to pay $1.6 for a townhouse. And so your buyer pool already is small. Your buyer pool is already small with the fact that it's 3 stories.
Right.
So there was a lot of features in the home that kept shrinking the buyer pool in his particular case, you know, and a lot of people, you know, if they're going to spend 1.6, they'll probably go get a single family home.
Sure.
That's not going to have an HOA and et cetera, et cetera.
Sure. Obviously that makes a lot, you know, you don't win all the time. What were you able to sell it, or how did it close out, and what did you take away from it with the way it turned out?
So that one was definitely one of the big L's that I took.
And we all have L's, so don't worry, you're safe here.
So that one, it was also turned out to be timing, which being about 4 years into the market, this was the first time that I had an election cycle during my tenure as an agent. And so I didn't realize also how much that played a role. A lot of people were very hesitant to make a move prior to the election.
Right.
So he ended up, I had the listing for 3 months. After the 3 months, he did let it expire with me. And then he waited, I think, 2 more months and then relisted with another agent. And so it was after the election, relisted it, I believe, around 158 or 159, and then he ultimately sold it at 155 or something like that.
Right, so almost $100,000 less than or at least $75,000 less than we originally started. And ultimately, all those factors and then price.
Yeah.
I get it. I get it.
So.
But we all have those transactions. That's how we learn. That's how we grow. That's how we get better. What about the ones where you've crushed it and you've won? Give me one of your most memorable transactions on the flip side.
My most memorable transaction was actually a transaction that I just closed recently.
Okay.
And the reason being is I was actually working late at night in my office. It was around 7 p.m. my time. And I was printing flyers for an open house and prepping tour sheets. And I got a phone call from an out of area, which, you know, usually when you get those, you don't know if they're legit or if it's a scam or what's going on. So, but nonetheless, you know, I answered professionally as always. And it ended up being a client who said he was in Virginia that had his son that's going to be moving out to San Diego.
Nice.
And he even put his son on the line. So I was like, okay. So then I started feeling like, okay, maybe this is legit. And so we, you know, started working together. He did come out like he said he was. 2 weeks later, we started touring properties. And on that very first tour, he found the one. So
he found the one on the first one?
On the very first tour, which hardly ever happens.
Sure. I need to see 50 homes before I choose the right one, or I learn a couple lessons that I missed the right one, and now I'm ready to actually buy. Yep.
Yeah. So we met up initially for coffee so I could go over the buyer's presentation, get all the documents signed, and then we went and toured homes. And he had toured properties before on his own, like open houses and stuff. Mm-hmm. And so that was the reason why also he told me, like, I know, like, I don't usually like, you know, a lot of things. And so for me to like all these things and for this one to check off all these boxes, it's definitely like the one.
Awesome.
So, but just like every transaction, nothing is ever really smooth. So there was a lot of roller coasters with that. We did a thorough inspection. A lot of things came up on that inspection. I ended up actually canceling escrow.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. And then the sellers immediately started fixing everything before they were going to go back on market. And so then when he originally saw the property, he saw the property on his own, and then his wife was in town. So then we went back and did another day of tours. And on that second day of tours, nothing really stood out the way that first house did. Right?
Nothing was talking to him.
Yeah. Got it. In the end, they really did fall in love with that house. And it's awesome. A gorgeous house. Like, it's definitely #goals. Like, it had a beautiful, you know, primary suite overlooking views, pool, spa. It has, like, you know, those soaking tub bathroom, like super nice walk-in closet, et cetera, et cetera. Obviously, we're agents. Like, I could talk about this. Like,
right. No,
house
I love
forever.
it. I love it.
But ultimately, what ended up happening was we ended up going back into escrow, and we ended up closing it faster than we originally were going to do the close. And so that to me, like, really stuck out, because the reason why the father is actually the one that originally reached out and called me is when he called me, he said, I was just watching one of your videos.
Really? Okay.
And so that to me, like, really stuck out, because at first I was like, which video? And I assumed that it was the listing that I had on the market in that moment.
Right, like a recent video there.
Yeah. And he's like, no, it wasn't that one. And I was like, oh, okay. So then I started thinking, well, was it the About Me video? So anyways, I couldn't get to the bottom of which video it was. But one of the funny things to me that stuck out in that moment is he said, well, I could tell that you have integrity. And I was like, wow, okay. So he picked that up from one of my videos. That's amazing. Like that's the most ideal client you can get.
Right. The reason why we do all the social media is so we can put out who we are and how we represent ourselves as an agent, as a professional. And then what happens if somebody sees it, a prospective client, and goes, yeah, that's the person I want to work with.
Yeah. They were like dream clients.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. And so, and it just shows like no transaction is perfect. And sometimes we have ones that we got to learn from, and other times we win and everybody goes home happy.
Yeah.
What is it about, like, what do you have to do to make those transactions smooth? Like, where do you have to put yourself, or how do you have to set the expectations to make things work out well?
So one of the things that I do automatically is right when I get into a new escrow, for example, I have a next steps email that goes out to my clients. And that email, I think, is like their little go-to. And the reason why I know that is, again, with my little text tricks, is when I send the email, I do send it in our software with Compass, and I can see how many times they've viewed the email. So I know this email is working, and I know it's really helpful, and they've told me. So I break it down of, okay, this is when your deposit is due. This is, when we're doing our inspection. This is when your appraisal contingency is due for removal. Your inspection.
Yeah, there's tons of them, right? The loan, everything. I mean,
sorry, I lost my thought for a second. But inspection, insurance, and appraisal and loan.
Nice.
So all these things are in there. And then, of course, when they're getting their keys. So that is what we stick to. And then throughout the process, I'm obviously updating them 100% throughout the way.
Right.
And then I've also have a TC that I work with who makes sure all the paperwork is done as well.
I love that. Talk about that technology piece right there. How many agents do you know utilize a technology where, almost like a CRM, where they can actually get out a video or a piece of content and then track, like, is anybody paying attention to this? And if they are, like, that's the one I want to stick to. How do you see that working out?
Well, I know one of the tips that I've even been giving out to other Compass agents is, for example, even when you send an offer, I make sure I send it through my CRM because, again, I want to make sure that the agent on the other side got the email. I can see how many times they're looking at the email. So if they're looking at my offer a lot, that to me kind of shows, okay, they're probably interested in our offer.
That's a good one. You can see how many times the agent on the other side clicks on your email and opens it up, because if they've done it once, like, okay. But if they got it like 8 times and then they come back like, well, we're looking at other people, you're like, oh, really?
Yeah.
I like that one.
I think it's a definite edge for sure.
Talk to me about the market in general. Now, you've been doing it a while, and a lot of agents are disappearing because it's been tougher. What's the biggest challenge that you're facing in today's market with your business?
Yeah, I mean, I think I just went through also a slump where I had like 5 months of working every day and not closing. And that, gets to be really hard.
Yeah.
But then in October, for example, after that 5-year slump, I closed 3. So then it kind of made up for it a little bit.
Right.
But it's like, I think that really genuinely is the hardest part, because especially in the beginning when you're newer, then you're on this roller coaster and you genuinely don't know, if these transactions are going to close.
Right.
But I finally feel like now that I'm about to start my 5th year in the business, that I'm getting a lot more referrals and I'm getting a lot more people that are referring me to their clients. And so I feel like the business next year will hopefully, knock on wood,
Right.
be a lot better and a lot smoother.
You've learned a ton. If we had to categorize like top 3 things that on your real estate journey that you've learned, like what would some of them be?
So one of the things, I have a little nickname for it. It's easy come, easy go.
Right.
And that's because if you have something that seems to come easy to you and it ends up canceling or not happening or whatever, that's the nickname I call for it. It's easy come, easy go. Because if it came that easy and then it didn't end up closing, that's okay, because it just wasn't meant to be.
Right.
So, but the top 3, I would say, again, definitely get mentorship. Definitely be mindful of, like, for example, when you're comping properties, making sure that you're comping apples to apples, making sure you take other things into consideration that might not initially be obvious.
Absolutely.
Like the power line, like the type of permits that are done for the property, or whether or not, the type of work that needs to be done to the home and how that could potentially affect like a VA buyer, for example. If it has a lot of, termite work that needs to be done or whatnot, things like that. And then the third, I would just say, is to
well, that's okay. I'll let you. I'm going to come
Hold
back
on.
to
Can we
that
cut?
No, keep going. We'll get
Will
back
it come
to
back to me?
Yeah, it will definitely come back to you. But talk to me about it, because what you just brought up, these are all experience learning lesson items.
100%.
Does it take a lot of those stepping on landmines, for lack of a better term, to get that ingrained? Or do you think that there's a good balance between like learning from your peers, learning from the other people on your team, also going through it? Or do you just like, no, the best way to learn is just do it?
Well, it's funny because that actually reminds me a lot of my dad, because my dad used to say a smart person learns from their mistake, but a wise person learns from others' mistakes. In real estate, you definitely are going to be learning every single transaction, because almost every transaction you do, there's something different. Every house is unique. And so, and also the people that you're dealing with are different personalities. So you're going to always learn something every time you do a transaction. And I think that's really, really valuable. Like nothing is going to ever take away from that.
It's 100% that. First of all, your dad, an amazing gentleman, having great sayings like that. Okay, that's number one. That's how I like to teach my children as well. But most importantly is, yes, absolutely being able to take something away from every win or loss along this journey, because there's a lot of agents that have been doing this for 20 years. They haven't learned a lot. And so when you're taking away each step as you go, I think that's the most important.
100%. I mean, if they're not taking it away, it might just be ego. So you have to really, and I think this industry really does humble you. So I think if it's ego and you're like cruising, I mean, I don't know, good for you. Maybe you're getting a lot of leads or something from your team. I don't know.
There's too much ego in this industry, that's for sure. But before I
like to earn my leads.
No. You're 100% correct. And before I let you go, I do want to have you flash back. And let's say I put you into the DeLorean and you can go back to when you first started. What advice would you give to baby Lena getting started in this industry on what to do to be successful?
Okay, so definitely I would say, first of all, is to find yourself a mentor. I think that's super important, to have someone that you not only look up to, but that you can also learn from. Second, I would say make sure you're, when it comes to comps and you're pricing out a property, make sure you're looking at things that aren't initially obvious.
Right.
And then third, I would say definitely lean on the people that you surround yourself with. Right. It's really important. The top 5 people you surround yourself with is going to really affect your performance and affect, your success in this business.
I love it. Lena, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for sharing your journey with all of us. I don't know anybody else who not only is as tech savvy as you, which actually drives but is also a great DJ.
Thank you.
I love it. Keep the Friday house music going. Keep the tech tips. I need more. And keep being you. I love it. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.
And everybody else, thanks for tuning into the CashFlow podcast. Again, the podcast where we talk about turning properties into profits. We'll see you next week.